Because they said, you know, we're looking at breaking with Great Britain, and we got to know who the traitors are and who are the good guys and who's going to stab us in the back. And she became one of a committee of 3 to help ferret out the bad guys versus the good guys, because she had that kind of connection, that kind of insight and wisdom. She's one of the sharpest, quickest wits you'll ever find.
Was it, I mean, because I just think of, you know, you think of movies from, you know, like those stupid Bonnet movies, you know, of, you know, what's her name? Emma Thompson is always in that, those awful, you know, Jane Austen. Ugh. But anyway, sorry, ladies. Ugh, torturous. But you see that, and they're always so prim and proper. Oh, I don't know if the captain will come home this week. And they just have finger sandwiches, and that's it.
Yeah.
Was a woman who was successful on her own, taking on jobs, wearing the pants whether she had to or not, wearing the pants, aggressive, I guess. Did they have the same rap back then? That, you know, people always say, oh, well, it's only because she's a strong woman that she gets this rap. Did they have that rap?
See, I don't think they did during the Revolution, because women were doing everything they could just to survive. If they were at home, they were working that farm. If their husband or their sons were off at war, they were in survival mode.
So it's
I don't
like,
think that was part of their thought process.
So it's like Rosie the Riveter.
It really is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they recognized them for what they could do. And whether that was militarily or politically or in business or anything else, I mean, the Bible says the fruit of your own hands commend you, and that was really what it was. If they were productive, could do something well, they were recognized and got the opportunity to do it.
But then, did that turn back around? Was there because after Rosie the Riveter, you know, then we went into the Valium years.
Yeah.
Because, you know, guys came home and they're like, no, honey, sit down. Just put a ribbon in your hair and lose weight. And so women were like, wait a minute, no. I mean... Well,
there was some attempt at societal pushback after the Revolution, just as there was with the growth of slavery after the... You know, the Founding Fathers pushed it this way really hard, and society, pro-slavery people pushed back. So, and the same way with women after the Revolution.
I think that, I mean, as I'm learning more American history, it really seems that we're being taught that these guys were white racists. Mm-hmm. They were misogynists, they were whatever.
Right.
It was all about them and, you know, their power. Really, it seems like there was a collection of amazing people, black, white, male, female, and the problem was us, the schlubs afterwards.
Yeah.
That after that vision was complete, really kind of people started relaxing a little bit and then gaining their own power, and it just kind of, it spiraled almost backwards in some way.
It did, but part of that's intentional. And, you know, as much as you are on socialism and expanding it, the term revisionist actually came officially in 1903 and is part of Marxian socialist propaganda. I mean, that's a term that they invented. And they said the reason you do this is you want to sever people from the old and move them in a new direction. You want to evolve society. You want transformational change. Revisionism was identified as a tool by which you can transform a culture. And so what we started doing is we had to make all these guys look bad, otherwise we'll be attached to them. So we got to make them look like a bunch.
Did anybody know that? Did anybody just know that? I didn't know that.
It's a 1903 term, and it is part of a political movement. And what happens, that's why if you want to sever yourself from the past, you got to make them look really bad. You got to make them look like a bunch of racists, a bunch of bigots, a bunch of atheist agnostics who you make them out of step, and then we say, who cares what they said? Let's do something. Let's have a change. Let's do transformation. And that's really where it goes. And that's same with women. If you make them look like a bunch of sexist males who had no respect for women, then we can move away from the founding principles and the Constitution and the Declaration they wrote, those things. This really is part of preserving the foundation of the Constitution or moving into something else. And history does that.
Okay. When we come back, I'm going to ask each of you for one story that you think people will say, wow. Wow. The one that really kind of sets the table or teaches us something about the character of these people or the time and what it really was. Back in just a second. Welcome to Founding Fridays. I want to make sure you log on to glennbeck.com and sign up for our Insider Extreme, where you can watch the 5 things you didn't know about the women of the Revolution. Back with us now, David Barton and Jane Hampton Cook. I want to, I guess, oof. I want to ask you each what you think the important thing is, that, you know, one story that you think people should walk away with. But I have to ask you about this handsome lady.
She was a school teacher. Actually, she was born in poverty, raised in poverty, a bunch of kids. Father deserted the family, went off and left. So she was made an indentured servant in order to get herself through. At the age of 9, she was indentured for 10 years. That took her through most of the Revolution. When she was 19, she came out in 1779 out of her indenture. She became a school teacher. But 1782, she wanted to do something for her country. So 1782, we still got some of the Revolution going. She has to enlist as a man. And so literally what she did was she got rid of the hair. She wound the upper part of her body really tight with bandages to make herself look like a man, and she dressed like a man and went enlisted. Now, what's interesting is she's 22 years, yeah, exactly. She's 22 years old at the time, and the other guys in the Army always kidded her about, you never shave. You're just a kid. Yeah, of course she didn't shave. She's a lady. She got wounded in a battle up at West Point, and she treated the wound herself so no one would find out what her gender was.
Holy cow.
She later, in Philadelphia, came up with a really high fever, almost unconscious, and so a physician had to check her, and at that time found out what her gender was. So when they found out the gender, they quietly moved her out of the Army. But General Henry Knox is the one that gave her an honorable discharge out of the Army at West Point.
Wow.
She ends up with a military pension because she served as a soldier, and if you were a soldier, you got the pension. So pretty cool story, but pretty tough lady. She went back to teaching school afterwards, and by the way she got the pension was interesting because she used to travel across America giving lectures on what she had done as a soldier, and she'd wear her uniform. And it was Paul Revere who wrote Congress and said, you forgot to give a pension to this lady over here. And she got the pension because Paul Revere wrote Congress and pointed out that they hadn't given her pension.
I'm telling you, I want my pension. I fought it.
All right. Real quick. Pritchard. She was commissioned by Washington.
She was commissioned because she got the name, Mary is her name, Molly's the nickname. In the Battle of Monmouth, 1778, June, really hot day. And if you're part of the artillery crew with all that powder going off and the heat and everything, and so guys were falling from exhaustion. She was running back and forth to the creek and the well, carrying pitchers of water for them to keep dehydrating, and that's how she got the name Molly Pitcher. Well, when her husband fainted from exhaustion, she stepped right in and became the rammer, and that thing kept the gun firing and did so throughout the rest of the battle. And at the end, when they found out what she'd done, that she'd kept that gun alive, but because it takes several guys in the crew to keep the gun alive. You got to have the rammer and the cleaner. You got to have the one that puts the powder, the guy who fires it, names it. So she kept that gun going throughout the battle. And at the end, she was commissioned as a sergeant in the Continental Army. Now, Washington, we think, did it. It may have been General Nathaniel Greene, but either way, it was a general that commissioned her. She served throughout the rest of the American Revolution. When she died, she was given a military funeral. She was buried with the honors of war and a military funeral at her death. Great lady, served throughout the Revolution.
And I couldn't even get a pack of cool cigarettes.
All right, so tell me the one story that you think people should know.
Well, I really think that Lucy and Henry Knox's love story is very intriguing because it really shows that the Revolution was a civil war. Henry owned a bookstore, like a Barnes & Noble type in Boston, and fell in love with Lucy. She was the daughter of a loyalist. He didn't care. They got married. And then a year later, Boston is under military occupation by the British. You can't come or go. It is in lockdown. Henry really wants to join the Continental Congress out in Cambridge. But what about Lucy? What's going to happen to her if he leaves? And so they made the decision together, and she sewed his sword into the lining of her coat, and they slipped through the dark of night over into Cambridge. And by 1777, it was clear her parents, who were loyalists, had disowned her. They weren't responding to any of her correspondence. But Henry recognized what a sacrifice his wife had made, and he wrote her a letter, and he said this: although father, mother, sister, and brother have disowned you, your Henry will always consider you the best boon of heaven. And he recognized that she had lived loudly for liberty, just as loudly as anybody else, and he appreciated that about her. And you just see how families were torn apart because they had to make a choice. And
So really, within 80 years or so, we had almost 2 civil wars.
Yeah.
We had the Revolutionary War, which was a civil war. We don't think of it that way. We think of the British, but I mean, how many of the founders walked around, talking like this?